Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thanks to Canadians for coming out on a Sunday night. It's Monday, but it is a long weekend, so we appreciate you joining us all the same. Thank you so much to our author, of course, Elizabeth Brina. Elizabeth Miki Brina. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I always butcher everybody's name. Speaks Okinawa, and is it Okinawa, not Okinawa?
Okinawa, yeah,
It
and
is
it's Miki because the I sound is the E.
Miki.
Same, yeah, Miki. Same with my last name, which is weird. It's not Japanese, so it's Brina instead of Brina. Usually people say Brina, and yeah,
Got that
yeah.
one
So
right.
you got that, yeah.
Wrong.
Miki Brina, yeah,
Miki
Okinawa.
Brina. Got it. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We read, everybody who comes tonight is theoretically finished your book. So hopefully we won't spoil it for anybody who has any pages left. I mean, it is a memoir, so it's a little bit trickier just to spoil. We're not talking psychological thriller here, but Elizabeth, I have the world's shortest bio on you. That's the only
I know.
So I will read that, but then I would love for you to fill in the gaps. Tell us how you got into writing. I know you're a teacher. We know a lot more about you than we do most authors, so that's a good start. But as far as your official bio goes, Elizabeth Miki Brina is a recipient of the Rona Jaffe Bread Loaf Scholarship and a New York State Summer Writers Institute Scholarship. She currently lives and teaches in New Orleans, and that's all I have.
I know. Yeah. I haven't done much, well, in terms of like accolades. So, yeah. What would you like to know about filling in the what else is there?
Maybe just talk about the writing process specifically, because you are a teacher and you talk about teaching in the book and how you got into teaching, and I'm sure everybody read that. But yeah, where did the book come in?
The book, okay, so everyone everyone read about when I was in Kansas City and I was having one of those like one of the midlife crises. I was in my early 30s. I don't know if that counts as midlife, but I just moved to Kansas City with Kendall. I quit my teaching job. I was just substitute teaching, and everything was like very like transitional. And what do I want to do with my life? And I was always like, I always wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be a writer since I was 13 years old. Is when I started writing, but I was just always very scared of it. I thought, like I can't, I'll never be able to do this. And so when I didn't have a steady employment or anything, I had nothing but time on my hands. And so I decided to just go for it. And I quit my substitute teaching job, which wasn't paying that much anyway. And then I like took a whole winter or it was fall actually, because the applications were due in January to just apply to MFA programs for creative writing, just because I didn't know what else to do. And then I got accepted to the University of New Orleans, and I started off actually in screenwriting. Because another thing too is I didn't know anything about screenwriting or memoir writing actually. I didn't know what I was writing. I was just writing every day. I didn't really know what it was. I thought it was poetry, but it actually turned out to be like essays. But I went into screenwriting just because I loved movies, but also wasn't very confident about my writing. And I thought, oh, like screenwriting, I get to just, it's a behind the scenes, even though actually screenwriting is probably the most difficult writing there is, but I didn't know that. But I went into screenwriting. I was doing the workshops, and I was only writing about my life. I was only writing about myself, and everybody there was like, you can't do that. And I was like, why not? But I had to take a nonfiction workshop, just because it was required, and I totally fell in love, and I fell at home finally. And even while I was writing working on stuff in the nonfiction workshop, I was still very afraid to talk about my mother and or about my childhood. It was all, it was about drugs and breakups, right? and and finally, I wrote. It was my mother's baptism, so I wrote an essay just about my mother's baptism, and it was the most positive response I'd ever received from anything that I had written. And everyone was like, oh my goodness, this is so interesting. And the professor was just like, this is your book. You have to write a book about this. And I was like, what? People want to know about this? They want to know about my mother. They want to know about my Okinawan heritage. I had never thought it would be interesting to anybody else. And so that's what started it. And that was in spring of 2015.
That's so fascinating, because I'm a huge, well, most people know this about me, but I am a huge memoir fan. It's my favorite genre. So
Me too.
I'm always thrilled when we read memoirs, but this was like I loved your book. I loved your story. I read about I read a lot of interviews and stuff with you, and I know that you were like intimidated to release it into the world. And I mean, how could you not be? But I'm so happy that you did.
Thank
And
you. Thank you.
I
Means
mean,
a lot.
you must. I mean, I know every author gets a couple of bad reviews, every single author in the world, but the positive reviews and like your Goodreads ratings and all that, that must be like so overpowering for you. And I am sure like the response you've received.
It has been overwhelmingly positive, and thank goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really, really grateful for that. Um, and I just saw a question flash up, and yeah, my mom was pleased with the book. She was the first. It was the first book that she had read in English. And she said that she didn't understand most of it, but the part that she did understand, she could tell was very good, which was nice. And also that it was true. And that felt really good too, that she verified it. She said, I was very worried about that, if we would have conflicting versions. And I also think it's just she's my mother, and she just wants to support me no matter what. But she also, and she said that everything in it was true, and that she wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't ashamed. And that's another part that I was really worried about. I was like, oh no, like I'm sure you don't want thousands of strangers like knowing about your alcoholism and affairs, and so she's incredible. She's very not let alone her friends, but all of the people from the church read it too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. So I know, right? I'm sure that was a lot for her, but she was so proud. She's really excited about it. I mean, she even, some of the older members of the church who like couldn't go to a bookstore and didn't know how to order things online. She bought them copies. Like she was that excited about it. So it's nice.
So we actually have so many questions about your mother, of course, and your father. I did want to, while we're talking about your mom specifically, one of my favorite questions that we actually use as a discussion question for all of our meetings globally was discuss the ways Elizabeth's mother is strong and courageous. And we wanted to know, how would you answer that?
I mean that, yeah, there's so many ways. I think first and foremost is just the decision to leave a place that she's never just leave a place, the only place that she's ever known, and that commitment to I'm going to move to the United States. I'm going to start over. I'm going to build a new life. I can't even imagine. I could never do it. I don't know if I could do it or not. So that was incredibly brave of her. And just, and then being in this country and having, that's another thing too, that I always took for granted, how the daily, strength, right? Like I'm self-conscious enough about speaking to people, with like being a native speaker of English. And I can't imagine how that was every single day, just like, you know, the kind of, building, pep talk to yourself about like, okay, I'm gonna, yeah. And I always, and that was one of the things I feel really bad about, because I couldn't appreciate that, is that it would, frustrate me, right? When she was so hesitant and shy and stammering, but it was so courageous of her to even just do any of that, and just, um, be in a room full of only native speakers, and hold her own. Um, and then, just, I mean, the ways that she took care of me, and the ways that she still takes care of me and my father too. She's really, all the time, uh, puts us above herself, and making sure that we have everything that we need. And I know, and that's one of the things, I know it's, I wish that she didn't have to do that, right? Because, we always talk, I think about that now more recently, about, that kind of, the archetype of like the self-sacrificing, selfless mother, and how it's not necessarily, complimentary. I wish so much that she had taken more time for herself, so it's, I feel strange applauding her for for that, and and saying that it's a strength, and it's courage. But, um I do really, admire her, for just, I don't know, she's so tough. She's just so tough, and she's been through a lot. So,
Absolutely.
mhm.
Um, Haley's asked a question in the chat window. She said, "How did your dad feel with?" Of course, we have to ask this, with your view on his outlook and attitude towards the end of the book. And we know he's read the book because he loves to read.
Mhm. Um, I think it's opened his eyes a lot, and I think he tries a lot more. He's so stubborn, and he's so stuck in his ways that he'll never, it's not going to be like a complete transformation. And also, it's been a while since he read the book, and I can already see him like sort of regressing
Right,
toward
right.
the old dad ways. But, I was very, very nervous for him to read it. More nervous for him, to read it than my mother,
Mhm.
because, it was, the book. The intention of the book was to understand my mother, and sort of build, um, put, see her in a way that I never saw her before, and kind of, elevate her and give her the focus, because she never had the focus for most of my life. And then in doing so, I actually had to kind of knock my father down from his pedestal. And I was really worried about that, like just that feeling of, wow, like I don't think he's, I mean, he had already had like a little bit of a hunch that I wasn't thinking that he was, a totally infallible, person anymore. But also too, the I was afraid it was going to reinforce, a lot of the like the rhetoric that was going on out there with Trump being president, and he, and which is still happening now, even, without Trump being president. But yeah, he had the idea too, like, you said this before, it's like the year Trump got elected, he said, "Oh wow, like he wasn't making the connection, but he said that, oh, the white man's really taken a hit in the last 5 years." And I was like, I don't know. Like that perspective, I was worried that he would think that I was brainwashed or what. But he was so and I'll never forget it, and I'll always be grateful to him for being very, very appreciative. And he said he learned a lot, and that he wished that he had known all of that before, and that he thanked me for writing it. And yeah, and he was also really proud of it too. And he did, I think he did shift his perspective. I think there's a tiny bit of, oh, okay, maybe it's okay that the spotlight is off me and off people like me, and I understand the reasons why. And I could sense that with how he was treating me and my mother. But again, like I said, it's been a while since he's read it. And I think, and you just kind of, it's hard to combat. How old is he now? He's about 74. So it's hard to, like, a lifetime of all this, like, um, uh, just a lifetime of thinking in a certain way, and everything that's all the ideas that are ingrained in you. So yeah.
I just want to go back to something you just said. You said he wished he'd known more about it while it was happening, but do you feel like you knew what was going on until you actually sat down in that chair and wrote that story? Like, how cathartic was that to actually explain your own identity and journey?
Wow. Yeah, I know. Oh, gosh. No, it was great. It was a huge gift. It was a huge gift to myself. It needed to happen. And you're right. Yeah, I didn't know that's just one of the amazing just for it's different for a lot of writers, but to me that's the point of writing, right? Is this that's why I write, is the self-discovery, but also a chance to discover myself in the process of explaining myself. Like, this is why I'm like this is why I did all those things, and I'm sorry. So yeah, it was incredibly healing. And I'm so glad I did it. I was yeah, it was really scared. It was very scary and painful, but at the same time, so it felt good. Like, I felt in a way that I never felt before, like put together, yeah, it felt good, really good.
I'm not even sure. I don't think you said it in the book, but like that you forgave yourself for that earlier, like that came across very strong, that you knew, like, you were a child and you didn't know better at that time, and you can't be held accountable for that.
Yeah, I think that's the place I was trying to get to. The forgiving my mother, like, in the same way, like forgiving my mother, even though there's nothing to forgive, right? Like, she didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't her fault. And yeah, and forgiving myself too. I think more is just seeing in the page, like, oh, that was really hard. Like, that was really hard. So no wonder, you made this and this mistake, or misunderstanding. And so it was nice. It was very rewarding to just admit that what happened was a struggle, right? Was difficult. The forgiving myself is still a constant. I have to keep I have to keep working at it. It's really hard. It's really hard to do that. Yeah.
Well, you're not alone. I mean, I certainly didn't have a comparable journey, but we all have parents, and
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's similar forgiveness is needed for
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it is a constant practice. It's just like, okay, like, like, yeah, like the you're only a child. Like, yeah. Moving forward, looking forward, yeah, all that stuff I tell myself.
Carrie has a question here. She says, sorry, ladies, anybody who doesn't know, if you want to ask a question live, you're more than welcome to. There is a raise your hand functionality, but you can also just pop your question in the chat window. Carrie asks, she says, I was struck with how your own growth was apparent through your trips to Okinawa. Are you planning another trip?
Yeah, as soon as we can get it together, for sure. I'm trying to, my parents are 74 now, and last time when we went to, or my dad's 74, my mother's about to turn 74. And the last time we went to Okinawa, we said that we were going to come back when they were 75. So that would mean, so what yeah, I think it's, thank you for the question, because it's time to start, to start planning that. And yeah, it's amazing. I wish that we could go back more often. We wanted to. My aunt actually was in Yoshi is in a hospital now because she lost her legs, and we were trying to get there, but because of the pandemic and things like that, we weren't allowed. I think now they're finally easing up on the restrictions, so we can make a trip. So. Mhm.
I got in very, very interesting, and I hoped she was going to be here tonight, but it doesn't look like she is. But her name was Mari, and she sent me a question by email, and she wanted me to ask you. She says, have you ever wondered or wished what your life experience as a child and adult would have been had you grown up in Okinawa? And before you answer, she just added to it that our little personal note here. And she goes, thank you for amplifying the voices of Okinawas. Like you, I am half Okinawan and half American. Like you, I'm a child of the 80s, but I was raised in Okinawa. As a child, I wished I could have grown up in the US, mainly because outside of my mother's immediate family, who welcomed and looked up to my American father, biracial children like me were called and treated as half and discriminated against. Your memoir gave me a window into what a childhood in the US could have looked like.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I didn't think about. I think there's a difference because the U.S. I'm sure everyone's very familiar with it. Is that we're the center of the world? Like we have that thinking all the time. We just grow up and just like like the U.S. is all there is. So there's this huge component of that. So I never thought, what if, like, about growing up somewhere else, right? I mean, I thought about it, and then I was like, "Whew, thank goodness!" Like, like that I'm growing up here, and now, yeah, especially after the times I visited Okinawa, and I really appreciate her perspective too. The difficulty of being, biracial in a place, in another place, in a place like Okinawa. Yeah, and I would love to read that book, right? What the experience of a half Okinawan would be in Okinawa. Uh, it I mean, I had such an amazing time with my family, and that was one thing I always felt here, was just like, I felt a disconnect with my family here. My there's a lot of drama going on my father's side, but they um but I don't know, just everyone in Okinawa seemed very interconnected and very involved in each other's lives. At least my family. They saw each other every day. I loved how they all shared a van. That I thought that was so great. Like, they just all shared one van, that they would take turns taking on trips or whatever. And so just that whole, and yeah, like, okay, so the US has all these other things, right? But, or whatever I thought that we had growing up, but we don't have that, you know? And also my mother, uh, could have been, I loved seeing her there because she was the center of attention, and she was the one guiding us all the time, and like and I wish that I could have seen more of that from her. And she was like that. I know she's like that. She's like that more. I see her more like that now, and I see her at the restaurant, and I see that kind of leadership, and people are very drawn to her. I never saw that before. But yeah, my family is too, and she's, you know, she's very charming and charismatic, and I guess all of that I would have been able to see more had we grown up in Okinawa. Like who the parts of her that I didn't get to see growing up here, and I really, you know, that I get sad about that. It makes me sad. So, but I'm also uh, definitely can see how it would be really difficult for a half Okinawan in Okinawa too.
Thank you. So anger and resentment are two adjectives that you could use to have to describe your relationship with your mother as you were growing up. That relationship has now changed over time. What are two new adjectives that you would use?
Mm, two new adjectives. I guess more like acceptance and admiration.
Hmm.
I think we both know each other really well. Like we know each like I mean I my mother knows me more than I know her, that's for sure. And she still surprises me with how much she knows me. Uh you know, because we don't talk like my father and I do. But it's all just this very intuitive, nonverbal, like, and then when she does say something, sometimes she'll just say something that I'm like, oh my God, what? How did you know that? And because and I think that was another thing too with what like learning and like being a non-native speaker definitely has its advantages too, where she is very direct, and she says things that I don't think a native speaker could say. Like she's able to capture things that I do, you know, and I wish I had examples, but it still really surprises me, and I'm like,
Is
oh,
it
and yeah,
is it
but
because she's trying to be concise in what she's saying, or
yeah, I don't know. It's like it's a different like um I think there's the concise part. You know, she can't she doesn't have a lot of words to mince, so it's just it's like it's a or she has fewer word like her vocabulary is limited, but it doesn't mean that her insight is,
right,
you know.
right.
So she's gotta and I don't know, and I think also that we're so like we grow up speaking English, we're so stuck in the rules and like what certain phrases mean and what and how to apply, and then she'll just kind of have a new way of saying something that is that is, oh, that makes so much sense. So
I better go to the chat because we have a whole bunch of questions here.
yeah, I
Julie wants to
agree.
know if you're planning to write another book.
Yeah. I'm working on another book now. It's very, very new and very, very fragile and messy. So I don't
Is it
I'm kind of
nonfiction?
it's a memoir. Yeah, it's another. I don't know how to like again, I don't know how to write anything else. I don't know. So yeah, I am working on a book now, and but it's a baby. It's
Okay.
like less than a baby.
We won't push you on it then, but we'll look
Yeah.
forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you. Fingers crossed. Yeah.
Linda wants to know if your mother's still waitressing.
Yeah. She doesn't waitress because it's too hard. It's too hard on her, but she still works at the restaurant, and she hosts. She's a
Mhm.
hostess and does all like the takeout orders, and but she's still like a fixture, and everyone really loves her. Um and she loves working too.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that she doesn't have to do it as often. I think she still does it too much,
Yeah.
because yeah, for her age, but also it keeps her young. Like she gets to be around, she'd be around people and be around young people all the time and talking to them. And she's actually a lot more. I'm so glad my parents aren't listening. My dad is. I think he knows that. I think that she's a lot more with it than my dad is.
Oh,
Like because he's retired and he just stays home all day and watches TV. And she's yeah, that's important. I'm glad she has that. Mhm.
Amanda just said your mother's directness after Kendall not being good for you after the breakup struck her. She did not mince words at all.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that pop up and I was like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's definitely one example I could think of. And it was great. It was exactly what I needed to hear. Yeah. And she yeah, she does that more often than I remember. So I have to start um being conscious about it when that happens.
Haley wants to know how long it takes you to write a book. I think it took 5 years for this one,
Yeah.
right? Is that right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how long it takes to write a book. I know how long it took to write this one.
Right.
It was 5 years, and hopefully I could write the next one faster than that, but maybe not, you know.
And she wants to know if you thought about writing a book that is not a memoir.
Oh, yeah, I have thought about it a lot, and I can't seem to do it. Every time I write, I have tried like I'm gonna write fiction, and then it doesn't happen. So,
I completely understand that. I wouldn't be able to write fiction either. Um, oh, okay. We'll read that one in a second because it's a long one. But how about we talk about language for a minute? Language plays such a key role in your book. It's almost its own character. Can you expand on how important it was in your life? And also, how are you doing with your lessons?
Mm, uh, that's another reason to plan a trip to Okinawa so I can get back into the lessons. I think I need the incentive. So I'm doing very I'm not doing very uh good with the lessons. Um, yeah, I mean, language. Um, obviously it's very important to me, and I think about it constantly. I'm from a very young age too. I was always sort of like narrating my life and novelizing, make trying to make it a story. It's just how I think and process. And for most of my life, I was very, and I think most people are the verbal language, how and then we like exalting mastery of verbal language. And something that I learned recently, I'm kind of trying to touch upon it in the second book. I think I do in this memoir too, but more so is what I'm thinking about now is how it's only a form of language, and it's not even the highest form, even though we make it the highest form. This verbal language, words, right? And being able to like so accurately articulate yourself and say exactly what you mean in the most effective striking manner. But there's so many different ways to communicate. There's so many different, just and I and I think that's one of the things I think about too, is like how we know each other, how my mother and I know each other without explaining, without having to explain, or how we know so many people, like just without having to explain, and the intimacy that builds without words at all. It's something that I'm really, really interested in now, actually. And I don't think I would have gotten here to thinking about that without writing the book, right? Without Because there was, and I think that's one of the, I made the language barrier such the fault. Like, oh, like we never got to know each other because of the language barrier. And then I realized, like, no, we did get to know each other so well, but I wasn't realizing it. I wasn't conscious of it. So now I'm looking back at all the different ways that we got to know each other just without talking. Yeah. So. Mhm.
Um, can you discuss your parents' relationship a little bit? I don't know where it landed in the end, because I
Mhm.
remember at the beginning, like thinking that they had such a sweet sort of like affection for each other. And I wonder if you can just expand, like, and now where they are. And then, but then I remember them being in Okinawa and your mother wanting to run and your father saying, don't run. And
Mhm. Mhm. I mean, it's so complicated. Because there's always going to be those. I think also there is the same adjectives they are with each other as like acceptance and admiration, right? Like they know each other so well. They know that these are the things that are not going to change about this person. And at this point, they're just kind of like, I'm not trying to change anything about this person anymore. Like it's over. We're done. Uh, and so I think it's a lot of just being grateful, like just appreciating each other. They it's not, it definitely hasn't been easy, right? Like they were, I know that um, I know my father, I know he was definitely a difficult person to be married to, right? He's very overbearing and he still has that. I think my mom is better at um, kind of, I guess, brushing it off and kind of navigating around that now. But they're really, I don't know, it's really, how do you describe a relationship? They're much sweeter to each other now than they ever were. That's for sure. But I know that those resentments don't go away either. I know my mom still, I know she still harbors them. But they're kind of, I don't know, I guess just repressed. I know that's not very healthy, but at this point, what are you gonna do, right? Uh, they've been married. It was 1974. So yeah, how many years is that? 1974.
74. Well, my husband was born in 72 and he's 50. So
Okay, so almost 50
yeah,
years.
there you
Wow.
go.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, again, it's just like acceptance, admiration, and also just a little bit of resignation too. Like, it's like, okay, this is it. Like, yeah. Um, and I don't know. I guess we all have to be okay with it, like with where our parents are at.
Um, when you were describing that, and your father and being overbearing, I just instantly went back to him calling you in the morning if he couldn't get a hold of you.
I know, I know.
I was like, I'm sure everybody was like inward cringe fest as he's calling the last people you called.
Yeah, I know, I know. It's really, when he did that, this is like real, he, the last time he did that was, I was 40 years old. It was this past Christmas. I'm serious. Yeah. He, I was hanging out with someone that I knew from high school, and I was like maybe an hour later coming home than I said I was going to, and he called another friend from high school that would have, because I wasn't answering my phone, and he called another friend from high school that would have this person's number to call them. I know, 40. And then when I got, and I was like mad, and he said, I don't, he's like, I'm sorry, I can't help it. Like, I was just envisioning carjackings.
Oh,
So I know, it's just like, that's
from a
still
good
where,
spot.
I know it's still where his mind goes. And it's like, Dad, oh gosh, yeah.
Um, okay, this is Amanda actually has a question about this as well, but the history of Okinawa is one of the reasons I love this book so much. It's because I knew very little about it before. So it's fascinating to learn about the history, culture, and people, not to mention their plight. Did you write the entire history first and then interweave it, or did you write it in sections? And secondly, how did you change gears from your own personal history to that of an entire people? Was that challenging?
Um, no, actually that was easy. The first person didn't feel right. Like, I'm sorry, the third person didn't feel right. Like, as soon as I switched to first person plural, I was just like, oh, this is, yeah, like, um, it made so much sense, and then it just flowed out, right? Like, because that was something I was struggling with to begin with, just like, how do I take all this history? Because I know the history has to be part of it. Like, that is so much a part of my self-discovery, and coming to terms with my heritage and my identity, and forgiving my mother, like, forgiving myself, is just knowing all this inherited trauma, knowing that like, history was part of it. Like, we had no control over. So I knew I had to incorporate it, and then I was like, how do I how am I going to do this? And as soon as I did it in the first person plural, it was, oh, okay, yeah. And then it was easy. I wouldn't say easy, but actually it was a really nice, it was actually a respite from all, like, the painful childhood.
Right.
And when I wrote the historical sections, as kind of having more fun with it, it was a little bit there was some more distance, and I got to be yeah, I don't know, I get to be someone else, and I guess by being someone else, I was trying to be Okinawa, which is pretty I don't know the word, brazen. But yeah, so I did write them in sections, actually, and it was because that was the only way I knew how to do it, was to kind of make it less overwhelming.
Sure.
Mhm.
To that point, Shauna has a question here, and I hope that I get it right. She says, this reminded me a bit of book group. I don't exactly know what that means, but it seemed like a process of therapy. Maybe she makes book club. It seems like a process of therapy in a way, and just the process of dealing with difficult situations and relationships and discovering how to move forward in a healthy way. Have you read Group? Or do you have other memoirs that inspired you or that you really related to or liked?
Um, I mean, I definitely the part about the other memoirs. Yeah, I think it was The Woman Warrior. It was the first memoir I read. Actually, I remember reading Growing Up by Russell Banks when I was younger. Um, and
Okay.
I caught it. I
That
caught
makes
it.
more sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, uh, and I never really knew of it as a medium to write in. And then I read The Woman Warrior by Maxine Hong Kingston, and the way that she wrote it, it was these it's just the architecture of the book. I kind of these sections, and there's a lot of gaps between these sections, because you can't. That's a thing. That's what daunted me about it. Is like was like, how am I going to explain everything? You don't,
Yeah.
right? Like, you just, like, you explain what you can, and by putting them side by side, is, the reader can make the connections and fill in the gaps. And also too, she was the first Asian American author I ever read. Chinese American. And that did give me permission too. It's just like, oh, people can write books about this. Like that's totally allowed. So
Sorry, I was just trying to find we had some questions on Instagram that I wanted to make sure I included.
oh yeah, no problem.
So Katie wrote, she'd love to hear, and I mean, you've spoken about this a little bit, but maybe you can just expand a little bit. I'd love to hear her speak about how she navigated writing her family story in a way that felt simultaneously honest and so gentle in her portrayal of her mom and dad. She also writes, I genuinely love this book and can't stop talking about it.
Oh, thank you. I mean, it's yeah, it's hard. It's love, you know. I really, really love them. I owe them a great deal. Like I owe them so much. And you know, like you know, and it's a debt that I feel like will never be repaid. And it's a debt that I resent sometimes too. So I'm just like, oh God, stop. Like, you know, like I still carry that weight and guilt of it. But I want people to understand that, you know, like just like I want people to understand me. I want to give them the fairest explanation possible, and I think, you know, to do them justice, which I still haven't done. They're, you know, because they're so much bigger than who, you know, who they are in the book. But it, you know, in order to even try to do it justice, I had to yeah, just be as real and genuine as possible, and show and make their and show their humanity, and kind of and make it earned, right? Like I can't it wouldn't do them justice if I just sort of characterized them and made them all like, you know, rosy colored, and you know, so I wanted to make them, I wanted people to understand them. I wanted them to be real, as real as possible as they were to me. So
Speaking of real, I actually listened to the book. So I listened to it on audiobooks. Can you, so like I can hear your mother in my head, but of course it's not your mother, but can you speak a little bit to that experience? Did you get to choose who narrated the book?
I did get to choose out of I think it was like it wasn't that many. It was at 3 or 4 people, and I guess what I like and the people that they chose were, they were all, you know, they're all people of color, and I think two of them were also Japanese and had some familiarity with the Japanese language, and you know, so I narrowed it down to those two. And I guess I picked the reader for this one. I liked the more like neutral style, like it wasn't like a theater,
Right.
you know, and so yeah, I thought that was like more appropriate for this book, for the content.
Haley said she writes, sorry, in the chat, I know the book is in English, but has any of your family in Okinawa read the book or know and understand what is written about them? Or if so, what were their thoughts?
So no one in Okinawa has read it yet, but it's going to be translated in Japanese.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so that'll be.
Will your mother reread it at that point, do you think? Yeah,
I think maybe she will. Yeah, and then we'll see what she thinks about it. Yeah.
Whole other experience. So I think that is all of the questions we have. We like to end these interviews though with a question about your own reading experience. If you have any books or authors that you can recommend or that you love, we love to hear about those.
Oh, I'm so behind the times. Like I'm reading things that are like, I'm always reading things that are like 20, 30 years old. But let's see.
Are you reading memoir or are you reading other genres?
Right now I'm on a huge short story kick, and I
Okay.
just finished Battleborn by Claire Vaye Watkins, and I loved it. And right now I'm in the middle of A Manual for Cleaning Women by Lucia Berlin. I love that one too. Yes, and I'm teaching an Asian American lit class this summer, and Amy Tan is on the list. And I've never I've read some short stories by her. No, I read an essay, Mother Tongue, by her, which is amazing, and a short story called Two Kinds, and it was great. So I've never read Joy Luck Club, so I'm excited. I put that on the list. And let's see, I'm trying to think of the last book that just really blew my mind. Aftershocks, Nadia,
Yeah.
Nadia Wusu. And that came out. Oh, good. I'm excited. That came out not too long ago. I think that came out the same year my book came out. So 2021. And that's a really, really good memoir if you're into memoirs. And Aftershocks. And what else? What else is going on right now? It's hard. It's
Aftershocks was actually in one of our votes. Unfortunately, it didn't win, but it was in one.
oh, okay. All right. Well, there you go. Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad I won. I'm glad I got on the list.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So yeah, that was I am really happy to be chosen for the book club.
Yeah, well, we've had just so many positive reviews. We're actually like meeting this week and next week because the month goes late. So book clubs are just starting to happen. So we'll get more and more feedback as the next 2 weeks go on. But I already know that it's going to be very positive. It's really funny, actually. Our next book is The Last Story of Mina Lee. And
Okay.
have you read
Mhm.
that by any chance?
No, I haven't, but I've heard a lot of good things. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's very good, but it's also about a daughter and her mother. They're Korean, but they've moved to the States, and the mother is the mother moves to the States in the book and has the daughter in the United States. So there's a lot of sort of like parallels in
Mhm.
your story and this one. So that's just irony that we're reading them back to back. So
Well, yeah, you can have compare and contrasts, yeah, and discussions.
anyways, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for writing such a brilliant book, and we can't
Thank you
wait
so much.
until we get to read the next one.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody for attending tonight, especially the Canadians, as it is a holiday. And yeah, and this will get posted online. So thank you again so much, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. It was great being here.